Hi, everyone. Welcome to our series Confessions of a CX Manager, where we talk to experienced professionals about their day to day challenges and wins and everything in between. I am joined by Salma Lahbiss, who is a consumer insights analyst at a French marketplace. Hi, Salma. How are you?
Hello, Natalia. I'm good. What about you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk to you, obviously, about the challenges and the wins on your day to day. And thinking about the company that you work for, I'm just thinking that a marketplace is usually actually a very difficult business because, in the context of customer feedback, you're probably listening to feedback from both, right? The sellers and the buyers, which adds the complexity to the entire strategy. So tell me a little bit about yourself, about your role at the company, and about your objectives.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. What you said about the complexity is absolutely correct. So we have feedback from sellers and from buyers. My role focuses on deeply understanding our user needs, whether these users are sellers or buyers, and to understand their pain points too through user research and experience measurements. So my role goes beyond just customer experience. I really have to ensure that the insights are actively shaping the decision making and are taken in consideration by the teams. So right now I have two priorities. So the first one is to turn feedback into action by talking more about the insights, sharing it actively with the teams. And therefore it leads me to the second priority, which is aligning the teams around customer centric decisions, whether it's UX, product team, or customer team. So across teams, it would be great for them to have the customer feedback.
Can you tell me a little bit what specific areas are you looking to improve or understand right now through your customer feedback?
For me, it's only a gold mine if it's helping solving a problem. So therefore, the main area I'm focusing on right now are first of all identifying friction points in the customer journey, um, and also understanding the metrics. So NPS, satisfaction, CS are great metrics, but understanding why every user gives a particular score is more important for me. Sometimes when you are analyzing feedback, you get some feedback that could help you enhance the experience rather than fixing existing pain points. That's a good way to anticipate product improvements.
This is great. And I'm really glad that you said that because I think a lot of our listeners can really relate to that because many times we focus on the metrics, right? The NPS, whereas it's really important to understand why that NPS or that score is as it is. And that's often a challenge for a lot of people in the industry. I wanted to chat to you about how you use Chattermill because obviously you've been using Chattermill for quite a while. So can you tell me how does the platform fit into your daily workflow? What's your usual first step, let's say, when you log in on Monday or first thing in the morning?
Chattermill is my go-to tool to analyze qualitative feedback. To be honest, I don't use it every day, but I use it very often. And when I do use it, my goal would be to understand the emerging trends and see what changed from my last visit. So I go to check the themes, the evolution of the net sentiment in the team, and if something changes, I try to understand why. So my go-to is would be go into some specific dashboard that I created previously to make using the platform easier and to save time.
You mentioned dashboard and reports. Can you maybe walk us through an example of a dashboard or a report that you're using and looking into on everyday basis?
So as you know, we have our specific theme structure in Chattermill. So one of the dashboards that I use often is, I would call it a generalist dashboard that allow me to have an overview about all the themes that we have. So the evolution of the net sentiment and compare it to the previous months. But what I love the most about this dashboard is that in addition to these reports, I have another reports within this dashboard that allow me to have more granularity to the feedback. Sometimes you can observe that the themes are stable, but when you look at the detail, you can see that there is a lot going on and you go to understand why. So this is my go-to dashboard that I use on Chattermill.
Just out of curiosity, are you the one who's building these dashboards and then sharing them with the rest of the team? How does it work?
Well, that's a good question. When we started, I tried to start creating dashboards, but we are a big company and we have different needs. We thought about involving the teams in the creation of dashboards. And that's a great point because when the teams have an ownership of the dashboard, they tend to consult it more and use the data more. For generalist dashboards, I created them, but I'm helping teams to create their own dashboards too. And I'm not the only one in the company using Chattermill. Many of my colleagues are using it, not particularly to build dashboards, but to create reports, just to consult the feedbacks, to get users feedback about specific topics.
Mhm. And that's so great to hear because one of our core priorities is just to make sure that everyone across the board, regardless if you are an analyst or not, you should be able to find the insights that you're looking for, right? You mentioned at the beginning that one of your core objectives is understanding what are the pain points and friction points in the customer journey. Once you find it, can you tell me a little bit, how do you prioritize, right? Those key customer pain points that your team should tackle next?
Well, prioritization is one of the important steps because sometimes you have a lot of friction points and taking action could be really overwhelming if you don't prioritize. And for prioritization, I use one of the features that you have on Chattermill, which is the impact analysis. So this feature allows me to identify the specific themes that have the most impact on the net sentiment, whether it's a positive or a negative feedback, but it also allows us to classify the impact of these of these themes on the net sentiment by attributing a weight to each theme. So that's one way of doing it. And I tend also to see the volume of feedbacks related to each friction point and also the impact that this team would have on our priorities in the company. Would solving this team help us to get more easily to where we want to be? Is it a team that contributes very negatively to the satisfaction? And then also, one of the way of prioritizing the friction points is the feasibility. Would it be easy to take action upon this specific friction points? We tend to combine these three items to identify the most impactful friction points and take action.
hmm And taking action is probably the most important step, right? So before you do that, before you start, how do you share those insights with the rest of the company or with the rest of the teams? Because obviously everyone needs to be aligned in order to take action.
Well, as you said, taking action is a challenge. Communicating the insights across all the teams is a challenge. So what we do is there is the metrics, but also the story behind it, and to make sure that what we share has the most impact. First of all, as you said, I regularly update the dashboards and I communicate frequently in some of our channels that these dashboards that are updated. Go look at the new data, but also we create a summary of, for example, 3 slides of what's going on in this month and what has changed compared to the previous month. And we add a little recommendation to make the insights closer to the internal users of the report.
And are you sharing those slides and those recommendations on some company-wide meetings, or you're joining any like team meetings with specific teams? How does it work?
So sharing insights is one of the most important steps of making them actionable. We share them across different channels. First of all, we have Slack channels dedicated to research and insights. Another way is to include these insights in our newsletter. I also present these elements in our biweekly meeting with my team and also in a meeting with the management. And one other way to make the insights closer to the teams is to include verbatims of the users. This way, the teams can relate more and can feel closer the pain of the user and hopefully help them to take action.
I love that. I love what you said about sharing the quotes and the verbatims because sometimes, even though we're looking at trends, right, we need solid data and we want to dig deeper. What are the exact customer words behind that data point? And second thing, I also like what you said about like using different methods for sharing those insights with teams. You've got Slack channel, you've got newsletter, right? Meetings. I always say that there's never such a thing as over communication. If you want to make sure that your teams are aligned with your customer insight, you really have to repeat over and over again. When it comes to analyzing customer feedback, I imagine that you guys have really large volumes of insights and customer feedback. What would you say is the biggest advantage of using AI for analyzing that feedback instead of doing this manually?
Um, the first benefit and advantage would be saving a lot of time, as to get through feedback. It's not like metrics. You can analyze them easily. No, you really have to read them one by one. The second one is relying on the depth that the AI has to understand the user sentiment and capacity to detect nuances between the feedbacks. And that's one of the great powers of AI.
Hmm. That's great to hear. I think many of our customers and users also say that it not only helps them save that time, but it also ensures that type of consistency, I would say. So that's great to hear that you see that benefit as well.
With the great volume of qualitative feedback, even if we analyze it manually or if we use a simple tool of AI to help us, well, we get insights about what's going on this month, but the power of the tools that are specialized in analyzing the qualitative data is i- their capacity to quantify the qualitative data, which allows us to compare to evolution more easily and just to have quantitative part of this data, which makes it, if I may say, more reliable.
So you can see the volume of feedback, for example, for specific issues and customer pain points, and then slice and dice this data into further details.
Yes, and also, for example, we can compare the impact of each team to the previous months and see what's going on. And I think that's something we cannot do manually or by using simple AI tools.
Now, speaking of examples, that's actually my favorite part. Can you share with us any example of an insight that you found maybe in Chattermill that really made a difference or impacted your decisions or your strategy?
I have an example of something that came to us by using Chattermill. As I said, we've been analyzing some data and comparing it month to month and seeing the impact of each team. And in the part of recommendation, we identified that by improving one single key area of our product, that would help us fix four main friction points that are coming every month. The impact of fixing it would be great and would help us to solve at least four major friction points in different funnels for our user. And that's something really insightful and that helps a lot to prioritize and to invest efforts in the areas that have the most important impact.
Hmm. Can you share a little bit how did you address that, if that's not a secret?
Um, First of all, to identify that is a real issue. I've seen the frequency and recurrence of this problem over the months, and I tried to understand the impact of this problem on the other pain and impactful things that the impact analysis showed us, and we included this in the recommendation. And I know that this is not something that would be fixed overnight. It will need time and to be improved. We communicated this to the management team and they have it aligned. And of course, that would be included in the most prioritized topics to
Mhm.
fix.
You mentioned that you've communicated that to the leadership team. Um, And I really love to hear your thoughts on how do you report in general on customer feedback to your leadership team? Do you have any KPIs that the leadership team is trying to achieve? The metrics that maybe they're tracking that are important for the business?
One of the most important metric that we follow is the customer effort score. So that's something we follow regularly, and I report regularly to our leadership team. And so this score is very important for them, but also the teams that have the most impact. In the impact analysis, there is this number related to the impact of the team.
Mhm.
And that's something I follow, and that helps me to communicate the evolution of the impact per month.
That's great to hear that you found impact analysis so useful on so many different levels. Now, I wanted to move to talk about a little bit about your experiences in general. We've got a huge community of CX leaders, CX managers, and I'm sure they would love to hear some best practices and tips from you. What would you say? What's one thing you wish more CX managers knew about using customer feedback in general?
And one of the thing is the time required to communicate the insights to the teams is not something to underestimate,
Mhm.
and it's effort to show the importance of the feedback to the huge part of the work. In addition to gathering feedback and taking the measurements and analyzing them, you think it's over, but you really have to go. And for me, this is the challenging part, and
Mm.
it's something that I learn constantly.
And it never ends, right? It comes back to that over communication that we talked about.
Yes, yes, and so
What advice would you give to our audience, to any CX manager that is just starting out with Chattermill? Sometimes it may seem, after all, it's an analytical tool, so sometimes it might be overwhelming for the beginners. What would be your piece of advice? Where to start?
I have two.
Okay.
Well, the first one is the importance of having a clear adoption plan, because making the teams go to Chattermill and using it and see its value, it's a real work. So having a plan for that would certainly help. Uh, another another tip that I have for the customer success managers that will be using Chattermill is you really have to put yourself in the user shoe. For example, if you are looking for a specific topic in the feedback, instead of looking for this topic, you really have to think, what would the user say to express his feedback or his frustration about this topic? What words would he use? Is there an implicit way for the users to express this his feedback? And these three things would really help you to get the feedback you want, instead of looking for generic words we use internally, or some common words. So you might be missing on some other feedbacks that are mentioned differently because you haven't put yourself in the user's shoes.
Hmm. I love what you said because we all have the tendency to live in our bubbles, right? And sometimes we think we know what the pain points are. But that's why exactly you have to listen closer to that customer feedback. Um, Salma, my last question. Any trends in CX that you're closely monitoring or that you think are going to be big?
I'm really interested in AI in user research, and really quite curious to see what would be the new tools, the new trends, the new use cases of AI in user research. And yeah, hopefully we will find out some cool tips and use cases of AI that would help us do our job more easily, to focus on the most important tasks.
Well, then, if you have any list of tools that you're looking into for in terms of AI for CX, then definitely please share it with us.
Sure.
Now, I'd love to move to my second favorite part, which is what we call 15 questions from Chattermill. This is basically a rapid fire question. where I just love to hear your first reaction, whatever your intuition tells you. Okay, we ready?
Yes, of course.
What's your secret superpower as a CX leader?
Um, Making data feel like human.
What's the first thing you check in Chattermill each Monday?
The trends and evolutions.
Which feedback channels matter most to your team?
What matters more for me is feedback from SurveyMonkey of the survey that I create.
One CX metric you're obsessed with?
The CES score.
Biggest CX myth you wish would disappear?
That NPS tells you everything because it doesn't.
What's your go-to way to get buy-in from leadership?
Showing the impact of the insights on a business level.
The most unexpected insight from customer feedback?
Sometimes when people are angry, they write some stuff that are first.
What the best compliment a customer has given to your team?
um, it's when customer write to us to express that they compare like the platforms years ago and now, and they say, "Wow, you really improved the platform."
That's lovely. What's your favorite Chattermill feature and why?
Um, I would say tagging in the workflow, it helps to save time to not do the same searches every time. And so it's easy to track things that you are interested in.
What's the most rewarding part of your job?
It's seeing that the customer noticed the changes that we do on the product. So it feels really good to see people liking what we do.
Hmm. The best piece of career advice you've ever received?
It's good to take feedback from people. It really helps you to improve, and some people are really trying to help you. So just listen to the feedback and take what makes us to you.
Love that. And the last one, if your CX team had a tagline, what would it be?
Well, I'm a part of a great user experience team, and I would say the tagline would be, "If it seems effortless, then we are doing our job right."
I really love that. Salma, that's all the questions that I had. Thank you so much for joining us today. It sounds like you're doing an amazing job, you and your team, for your customers. So I'm really keeping fingers crossed for you and everyone in the company to fix whatever you want to fix, improve the customer experience. But it sounds like you're absolutely on the right track. So once again, thank you for joining us. And yeah, I hope to hear from you soon.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for this great initiative of gathering feedback from all the customer success managers, of users, or user researchers. And yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, stay tuned actually, because more interviews are coming. So yeah, take care, Selma.
Thank you.